Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Quorum called.
Director Black,
Excused.
Director Kreutz,
Excused.
Director Dakotas,
Here.
Director Heath,
Here.
Director Marian,
Present.
Director Moses, Director Meserve,
Here.
Director Sargent,
Here.
Director Silvestri,
Here.
Director Welch,
Here.
Chairman Carlo,
Present.
Mr. Nobile,
Here.
Ms. Hall.
Here.
You have 9 members present and 2 excused.
9 directors present and 2 directors excused. A quorum is present. The Vice Chairman.
Move to accept the agenda.
Dr. Welch moves to accept the agenda. Is there a second? Director Sargent, pending question is acceptance of the agenda. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails and the agenda is accepted. The Vice Chairman.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Dr. Welch moves to approve the minutes of the prior meeting. Is there a second? Dr. Sargent, pending question is the approval of the minutes of the prior meeting. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails and the minutes are approved. Chair inquires if there are any members of the public who wish to address the board. Seeing none, the Vice Chairman.
I move that we approve the consented calendar.
Dr. Welch moves to approve the consent calendar. Is there a second? Dr. Welch? Director Sargent? Pending question is approval of the consent calendar. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails and the consent calendar is approved. Is there any objection to taking a matter out of order? Seeing none, the chair directs members' attentions to item 19, executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA section 4056A to discuss a personnel matter. The Vice Chairman.
Move that we enter executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 405-6A to discuss a personnel matter.
Director Welch moves to proceed to executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA section 4056A. Is there a second? Director Heath. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails and the board will proceed to executive session. Director Meserve.
I would like to make a, can't do it
The
right.
chair understands that Director Meserve moves to approve the leave of absence.
Yes, I just didn't want to put any details into it. I was stuck there. So I would like to approve that.
Is there a second? Director Dakotas? Pending question is to approve an unpaid leave of absence for a teacher at Bonny Eagle High School for the 2025-2026 school year. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails, and the motion is agreed to. Chair directs members' attentions back to item 8, report from the chairman. Chair will advise that the Bonny Eagle High School graduation will be on June 6th at 6 o'clock in the afternoon at the Cross Insurance Arena. We have tickets available for members tonight, members and their families, so please do take some home with you for you and your guests if you plan to come. Are there any questions regarding my report? The superintendent.
Yes, it'd be helpful if I put on my microphone. Good evening. So I don't have a long report tonight, but a couple of important items. Amanda Blunda has been named the York County Teacher of the Year. She is a Buxton Center 4th and 5th grade experiential learning teacher. She was nominated by a colleague, Sandra Reevy, and she was honored at the Hall of Flags on last Wednesday. And it was a very top secret. We weren't allowed to tell anyone. She wasn't allowed to tell her class. I was probably the worst one keeping the secret. I mean, what are they going to do? Take it back? They weren't going to take it back. But we were very proud of her. It's a nice ceremony, and it keeps the streak going. It's not consecutive, but we have a number of teachers who have been named County Teacher of the Year, and Amanda continues that long line of representing Bonny Eagle very well. So it was very nice to be able to go, and we're very, very proud of Amanda. The other thing I wanted to mention is it's been a long couple of weeks. We had, but good, we had budget meetings in all the towns leading up to the district budget meeting last week. And then we have the vote coming up on June 10th. You know, there was decent participation. I'd always like to see more, but, you know, there were some good questions asked at the district budget meeting. And I appreciate the fact that people are taking an interest in and are interested in asking questions and learning more about our budget and our operations. I have a professional retirement to report. Judith Stackpole, the school nurse at Steep Falls Elementary, will be retiring from her position at the end of the school year. She just has family matters that she's decided it's time to make the decision, but Steep Falls is really going to miss her. She was a very unique person and a unique fit for a unique school, really. And then we have a professional resignation to report. Charles Burdahl, math teacher at Bonny Eagle High School, is resigning at the end of the school year. And I'll have more to say about an update on school goals later.
I just wanted to add that Friday we hosted the Cumberland County Special Olympics, and it was a truly amazing day. I don't know if any of you got a chance to stop by or at least watch the parade in the morning, but we had like 14 different school districts and adult agencies participate. MSAD6 on its own had 84 athletes participate. Always a really amazing day, and just so inspiring and makes you so proud. We had many student volunteers from the middle and high school running the events, lots of adult volunteers from the community. Just really, really proud of our district.
Can I add another one? I remembered another one too. It was a busy week last week. I wasn't here, and so I didn't get to go, but I should have remembered it because I was representing the district at an event hosted by O'Connor GMC. It was a ride and drive event promoting our propane school buses. They love to have me come and talk about our propane bus fleet. I don't know why. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it because I think it's pretty cool, but I got to go there and they called me a keynote. It wasn't very keynote, small keynote, but just gave a talk to other districts in the state who are considering switching to propane. And every time I go, it just reminds me how out in front Bonnie Eagle is on this issue, because there's still a lot of large districts using diesel and haven't even thought about other options, whether it's electric or propane. And then we also, last week, while I was at Amanda's ceremony at the Hall of Flags, Lori was presiding over the 25-year recognition event here in the district for all our employees. We do this annually for employees who have reached 25 years of service with the Bonnie Eagle School District. So River Tap has hosted us the last few years. They do a great job. And I think it was enjoyed by all 6 people this year, and well attended and well enjoyed by all. So that maybe is the end. There's other things, but I think my colleagues to the right here are going to report on some of the other happenings over the weekend, maybe other things. Yeah.
Are there any questions for the superintendent? Seeing none, item 10, report from student members. The chair recognizes the student members.
Thank you. At Bonnie Eagle High School, the junior class hosted the junior prom last Saturday. Thank you to the junior officers and lead advisor, Mr. Liddif, for putting this special event together. The 8th grade transition night was hosted last Tuesday and had a great turnout. We wish them a smooth transition and look forward to seeing them all next year. The senior banquet will be held on Saturday, May 31st from 6 to 10 p.m. at the Elks Lodge in South Portland. And the Summa Cum Laude recognition banquet will be held on May 28th.
All right, and from Hollis, 3rd grade went on a field trip to NC Watson School Museum from Buxton Center. Congratulations to Amanda Blunda as the York County Teacher of the Year. And that is it for our report.
Any questions for our student members? All right. Thank you for that report. Reports from committees. Dr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment about the budget. The Finance Committee worked on the budget after the Budget Advisory Committee made recommendations to Mr. Gleason and Ms. Pooler to make some changes to the budget that was passed to the Budget Advisory Committee. They came back to the committee and we unanimously supported the changes, and it was brought to the board. The board did the same. But the thing that I really want to point out the most is the fact that Mr. Gleason and Mrs. Pooler visited all of the towns and virtual with Fry Island, and I reviewed all of those. I attended the Hollis one. I reviewed them. The reception was unbelievably favorable. And the meeting that we had last Thursday night over at the high school was also very heartwarming. So I'm happy with the method of which Mr. Gleason and Ms. Pooler have developed to get the budget to us and give us input on it, and I think it's really helping, and their presentations were very, very good. So the Facilities Committee met on the 8th of May at 3 o'clock here in this building. There were no public comments. The minutes of a previous meeting were approved. The payroll and the accounts payable warrants were reviewed and signed by the committee. We reviewed all of the expenditures and revenues, and happy to say that everything is right in line where it should be. We looked at the capital reserve balances and other fund balances, which are also healthy and where they ought to be. We got a report from Mr. Ingold on our facilities. These folks are very, very busy in our buildings, and they're not just doing preventive maintenance. They're doing a lot of emergency repairs because our buildings are so old and our equipment is so old. He gave a long laundry list of things that they're doing, and I won't list all of those, but if you check your packet, page 24, 25, you can get a report of all the goings on. So they're doing a great job, and they have a hard job trying to keep up. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moran, for that report. Are there any questions for the Finance and Facilities Committee? All right. Further reports from committees. Director Dakotas.
Thank you. The Committee on Policies and Rules met on May 5th. We began the meeting at 4:40. There was no public input. The minutes of April 7th were approved unanimously. We had a few items to discuss before we got involved in policies. We reviewed the opt-out options for families in our curriculum. That is under policy IMBB. And again, just delineated how protected parents' rights are with their choices to opt out on different parts of the curriculum. We discussed the nature of the reports from the Policy and Rules Committee to just brainstorm if any changes were needed. We then began the review of the policies. The first one is KHC, which is the distribution of advertising and non-school materials. No changes were made, so it comes to the board as an FYI. ADC is, the use of tobacco and nicotine products. And the changes were just made to add updated vocabulary that is part of this policy. The changes were approved, and that will come to the board. The procedure that goes with ADC was also approved. That did not have changes. EBCF is the automated external defibrillators, and that was not changed. The people involved in the use of this equipment reviewed it, and there were no changes found to be needed. The procedure EBCF-R was also approved and sent to the board as an FYI. And we adjourned the meeting at 5:28.
Thank you, Director, for that report. Are there any questions for the Policy and Rules Committee? Further reports from committees? Seeing none, the chair inquires if there's any objection to taking another item out of order. Seeing none, the chair will direct members' attentions to item 13, presentation on building assets for student success. Chair recognizes the superintendent.
Yes, we have 4 of our elementary administrators here to give a brief presentation on BAR, which they have all been working on implementing this year. It's something they have coordinated, and if you remember, I think you've heard about BAR before, but building assets, reducing risks. Thank you. I couldn't come up with the last one. And so they're going to give you a sort of a quick update on how that's going, I think, and positive impacts.
Yep, you can go to the next one. Yep, you can go to the next slide.
Hi, Charlotte Regan, HBMRE Principal. Thanks for having us. I'll start us out with, there you go. Why BAR? Why now? As most of you know, the middle school piloted BAR last year with one of their clans, and I believe are fully implemented this year. So last year in the spring, when the state reached out to schools if they were interested in having funding to also have other schools in the districts, an area around the state being trained, we looked into it, and one of the things, Aaron McGuire was really helpful in presenting at an admin meeting, discussing, what it really looks like and how it's helped the middle school, and it was kind of an aha moment for me, realizing that this would really help our MTSS process with streamlining that and being more successful, and another big thing of being a bridge to the middle school where we're sending kids there. So the intention was actually to kind of maybe pilot some grade levels. I know at HB it was 4-5. Again, intentionality with bridging to the middle school, but we actually have been able to this year train every teacher and various staff members. So we are fully implemented whole school, which was a lot bigger than what I know I anticipated, because the initial training was a huge success. And I know Georgia Jack being a 4-5 school, we wanted to make sure they were all trained as well. The ongoing PD has been a huge value to the success of the implementation from the coaches that they send.
I don't really need this, but I guess because we're
For the folks at home.
for the folks at home. So you may have heard about some of these components when you heard the middle school's spiel on BAR, but I'm going to just review them for you because they probably look a little bit different for the elementary schools. The small block, big block, Community Connect, and U Times are how BAR organizes us to support students. The small block is essentially a designated time when teachers or PLCs, professional learning community, I was going to say crew, the professional learning crew gets together to meet in smaller groups to monitor student progress. There's an awesome spreadsheet that they provide that we can then fill out for every student, from the super challenged students right through the kind of, quote, average student and up to the high flyers, to personalize all the support. Then there are big block meetings, which involve more adults. So it's a larger group where staff will get together for insights to coordinate more comprehensive interventions for individuals. And then where there are even greater needs, there's a meeting known as the Community Connect. And that's where that whole group, the big block, minus teachers, but plus other resources like the school nurse or the school psychologist or the dean of students, administrators, others will get together, even sometimes resources from the community to figure out ways to support a student and their family in some cases. And then Charlotte will talk a little bit about the U-Time in a few minutes, but essentially the U-Time is a dedicated time during once weekly during the school day where a teacher provides a lesson that focuses on how to build community, to build social skills. It's an intentional support for the whole student, and it kind of also gives the teacher a chance to see who the student is and how they respond.
You'll notice quotes throughout the presentation. We're not going to read them to you, but we summarize them in our talk. So the emphasis here is on all and intentionality. Those two words are critical. So the BAR model helps us to focus on all students with intentional structures. So those things that Sue just referenced, our big block meetings, our small block meetings, our Community Connect meetings, our U Times, they help us do things like proactively build relationships. We use the informal data from our U Times as part of our big block, our small block, and our big block meetings. We bring it in with our academic and our achievement data. So we're really looking at the whole child as we discuss them. In doing so, it helps us to identify a student's needs early on so that a gap doesn't build or get bigger, and really provide interventions and supports in real time. So the meetings are not casual. They are very scheduled. You'll see in Ashley's quote, 8 minutes. They are scheduled, they are structured, they are facilitated, grounded in data. We constantly are returning to the data. And most importantly, they end in clear, actionable steps for every child we talk about. We set goals and we make a plan to return in 6 weeks to see how our interventions have worked. And that is new to us, that process.
Hi, I'm Chris Casey. I'm the principal at Georgia Jack and Steep Falls. We were very lucky. Georgia Jack, just 4-5, as you know. We were very lucky that we were all trained over the summer because of the funding that the state had offered us. So we started early on in the summer with the process. And when I say we were all trained, I don't mean just teachers. I mean teachers, ed techs, specialists, not just the classroom teacher, which is a pretty big impact on our students. Staff outside of the classroom are able to build relationships with our kids that they normally wouldn't have had the opportunity to build because they might learn more about a student in one of these small block or big block or Community Connect meetings. Every staff member is able to be a more active participant in helping our students overcome obstacles, celebrate their successes, and find solutions to issues that they may not be aware of. One of the imperatives in BAR is you lead with the positives and you look for the strengths, and that's really important in the work that we do. We're always looking first, what's positive about this student and what can we build, what works for the student, what can we build on. So even our bus drivers, who are our monitors as well, our lunch and recess monitors, they may not attend BAR meetings. They could if we needed them at a big block, but they are definitely participants in the BAR community. I can say to Miss Tina at any time, hey, is there anything you're noticing about so-and-so while they're riding your bus or when you pick them up or anything at recess? And she jumps in there and makes that connection with the kid and helps us see a little bit more of the picture than we would just inside the classroom.
So again, we have some quotes, not going to read it, but one of the things where I was thinking, okay, what's working for our elementary teams? One thing that kind of stood out to me was I really feel like BAR has promoted teacher efficacy, where I've seen teachers grow throughout the year of being intentional and even seeing, as they've all mentioned, the structure of small block and big block and community connect, where it's all around students creating goals and strategies. But I've seen it transpire into our trimesterly data meetings. At the end of each trimester, we've been doing data meetings for a while, but I've seen them turn and take a different focus where teachers are really taking more risks and feeling empowered about some of the suggestions and strategies they're thinking about students according to the end of the trimester data, which I think has been a huge plus. And then, it's me still. Click. So U Times, as we mentioned, is once a week lessons that are structured. But the biggest thing, like Angela's already said, they really are intentional. I mean, what you might think of a U Time, I think they can be somewhat icebreakers. I'm sure many of you have taken place in icebreakers, but it's not just the teacher leading the activity. They really are looking to collect any data on students that's not that quantitative data, but qualitative data. Like, for instance, this was a first grade U Time about what I like about me, where they read a book and then brainstormed, and each kid designed something that was something positive about themselves. And if we're noticing kids that aren't able to come up with something, that's something that we intentionally look at, not just, they didn't finish the activity, but we use that data in those small block and big block meetings to help support them. Also, another big thing, I'm not going to read everything through, but one of the big things, it allows students to shine in other areas versus academics, right? Because some kids bring strengths to the table, and the U Times really help do that as well. Yeah.
Okay, so there are a couple pictures up there of our Hollis kiddos in action. So the bottom left is a first grade classroom. They're working on measurement. It's Ashley Vanessa's classroom. And the top right, those are our pre-K learners sporting their matching rain gear, which they were very excited about. I haven't seen that much joy from a group in a long time. But really so that they can be doing outside hands-on learning no matter the weather. So I think that, these moments reflect some of what BAR has helped us to do. So to focus on each student, to build meaningful relationships, and create the right conditions for every single child to thrive. And it perfectly aligns with our district mission and our strategic plan, that helping each child reach their full potential. In March, we learned that our BAR funding, which was part of an ESSER grant, was being rescinded. And as year one implementation sites, we were pretty nervous, but then we sat with it for a little while and we talked and we realized we're okay. And part of the reason we're going to be okay is that what is unique about BAR and really great about BAR is it helps us to very intentionally build internal capacity. It's that idea of the expert down the hall. At Hollis, it really has helped us to, in some places, build trust, some places rebuild trust, and bring people back together for a common purpose. I think people are realizing that I'm not alone anymore. I may be struggling with helping a student, but I just need to go to my PLC in my small block and get advice there. If those interventions don't work, I have another whole layer of support around me. That's been really powerful for our staff. We have that internal capacity is what's going to let us continue. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that we have really good momentum going. BAR has had a very positive and powerful impact on the cultures of our schools. And the dialogue around it, the staff energy around it is just incredibly powerful. So we are very excited to see where it brings us next year. And I don't know if you can read that, but they say, I come to school because. Are there a few that you can read out? Can you read them? I can't read them.
To see my friends and learn.
Yeah.
Because the staff are nice and the education is good. Friends. Yeah, I love the kids.
Yeah.
I like math. I love the community. I like my school. I have to learn. That's reality. Hold on. I was going to try to make it bigger, but I can't read those two.
That's okay. Are there any questions that you might have for our team?
I guess how hard or how easy was it to kind of implement this as we kind of go forward? What were some of the challenges or lack thereof?
Speaking for Hollis, Hollis was not signed up to be a bar school. We were the fortunate beneficiaries of another school backed out in another district, and I said, yes, please. So kind of catching up has been difficult. I think anytime you try something new with staff, you have to be really intentional on how you get them on board. I was lucky enough that my staff were ready for it. They were asking for it. They were asking for additional structures. There's a learning curve, though. The spreadsheet that Sue mentioned, I think, is just really comprehensive. It's very dense, and it feels overwhelming at first. So kind of getting through that hoop was a bit of a challenge for us.
I think for HBE, I can speak. I know, as Chris pointed out, she was able to get everybody trained in the summer, which part of the funding could pay people to do that, because they're coming in. My staff had a lot of people not here in the summer. So I was like, I can't set that up. I had new staff because my initial was let's start 4-5. So I needed to train in September, but I did it early so that we could use some of our ed techs because we never get enough subs. But they weren't in flex groups yet, meaning in the classroom, because it was right in the beginning that we could use them as subs. And then I think because we all were on board, one of the things that was helpful is we shared our trainings. So since it was such a hit with 4-5, and they're like, we need to get the whole school trained, we sent third graders and third grade teachers. Then I think we sent second. So eventually we sent K was our last group. But it was really inspiring because our K teachers had heard about and heard the talk. So we had a new student come in, and they actually used their bar training and made a goal for a student and a strategy that worked right away, and that student has been so successful. So they implemented it right away.
One of the greatest things that BAR provided, and it was because of good funding, was our BAR coaches. I'm not familiar with your coach, sorry, but Sue, Charlotte, and I shared the same coach. Her name's Katie.
The person from BAR.
The person from BAR. We shared the same coach. Her name is Katie, and she quickly became a Georgie Jack, Steep Falls, I can speak for HBE, and Edna Libby family member. And they do 4 visits a year. She's been out 4 times to each school. Weekly meetings, we meet with her weekly, but she's really become an important part of the whole process for us. She luckily has become a friend and a family member, so we won't necessarily lose her in the lack of funding next year. We will still have her working with us. Yeah, she's on speed dial for certain.
Tonight, she texted me. Presentation.
I didn't really have a question, more of an ad just for the board. We always have historically had lots of teacher meetings to talk about kids and talk about kids who are struggling and try to come up with plans. And people would come to the table and just kind of throw their hands up in the air, or you'd spend like 45 minutes talking about the same two kids who were driving the teachers nuts every single week, and they weren't always productive or moving things forward. BAR is really about teaching staff how to use, it's a structure, right? They create a structure so that the time is really effective, and you talk about all students. So nobody slips through the cracks just because they're not the squeaky wheel in the room who's being the most like, pay attention to me. And I think that is my observation that's been really different in like the couple of years at the middle school, as that it forces the PLC groups and the community connect groups to really look at every kid and what plan can we make for every student.
Yeah, and just a side note on that, the two things that stand out in what you said are the common language that we now have amongst each other, and then as our kids move up through the middle school, so everyone knows what to expect with these meetings and everything. And also, it's not an initiative. You know, when you're talking about any of these kind of consultants or people coming in to give us ideas, it is, but it's long lasting. There's no reason you can't move forward for a long time using the processes that we now have from them. And that's what I appreciate.
And it's, even
logistically.
though we got cut short because the funding got cut off for next year, it's not intended that you need a coach forever or that you have to invest money in it forever. It's usually 2 or 3 years, and then the school is ready to fly on their own. So I think we'll be okay.
That's what I was going to ask about, is now there's no funding, and it's wonderful to hear the foundation that you have, so you feel comfortable with going forward. But in the future, I worry about staff turnover or new people who didn't get the opportunity to have that expertise and hear from it firsthand that you all found so beneficial. And I just wonder, what is some funding, or if there are unmet funding needs that you really do worry about? And other than just saying, yeah, no, we got this, we're gonna do this, are there unfunded needs that we should be thinking about and considering, because this is sounds like such a beneficial program, and we need to make sure it's fully optimized?
I mean,
Well, I think it is pretty expensive, which is why the state, it was, jumping with them was huge. I think the biggest thing is, I know Chris had all of her teachers and staff. My goal was to get like our pre-K teacher trained, and then and some ed techs that we didn't get trained. So, but I do feel with the and I think that's a lot of money if the state wasn't funding that. Like, maybe Clay can speak to that. I don't know if he knows the amount. I think I heard. Do you want me to say what I've heard it is? I think it's 30 grand, like a year. Yeah, per school, which is a lot, that's why we're really fortunate, and I'm glad that we were able to take advantage of this year to really build a foundation, like Angela said, more than I expected my school was going to get to. And I do feel the energy from my staff, I hear you, staff turnover, our coaches, is really going to help move this forward, would continue. But I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your support.
I foresee us doing training as part of onboarding with our new staff, whether it's led by me, led by my coaches, led by, each building has a coordinator, it's a stipended position, whether that person leads it. I certainly feel comfortable enough that I feel like I could lead it for my newbies, and we could probably collaborate and do it together. So,
Great idea.
I do feel like they've equipped us in a way that will allow us to move forward.
Two questions. So I know our Buxton administrators aren't here tonight. That's fine. Is Buxton also implementing this yet? So we.
Sorry.
Right, and I'll just add, Buxton, I feel personally, having been an elementary principal too, like in the system, they had a better handle on MTSS, which is different than BAR, but related to BAR, and not that it wouldn't benefit them, but I think they wanted to kind of sit back to and sort of see how it went before they disrupted the systems they had in place. So it's not that they wouldn't or won't ever participate, but right now they currently haven't.
Okay, thank
We
you.
did we discussed that last spring when we were signing up for this, and Mr. Pendleton said, you guys see how it goes and we'll watch as you do it.
Yeah, so that goes back to what Director Heath said, that if we find that, Buxton does need that additional level of support, that's something that, we would want to hear early. So from your team, from the superintendent office, the curriculum department, if you hear that, that's something that we would want to know so that we can try to work it in. And if it can't be worked in 1 year, can we, do future planning to see if it could come another year? So just keep us in the loop. And then just a second question, just about logistics. So obviously we have a lot of kids, they are distributed across the school. You are getting to all of them. I saw the 8 minutes. I don't know how long your minutes are. How long does it take you to kind of get through the cycle to talk about all your kids? Because obviously you can't do all of them every week.
For Edna, we really started in the middle of the year. So we are piloting most of these processes through the spring, which feels like less pressure, honestly, because we know that everyone will be trained by the end of everyone is trained now, but that was our goal, to have everyone trained, and then over the summer or in the spring into the summer, and then in the fall, really go from the beginning. Right now, we're practicing everything.
Yeah, I think our coach, basically, we already had structured PLC meetings, but we made sure they were intentional around students. And so it was a goal for each teacher to share 2. And you basically talk about thriving students, as well as, they maybe don't need a huge goal or strategies. But then the kids who need a goal and strategy take a little bit longer. But the goal was to try to discuss as many kids as possible. And I think our spreadsheets have something about every kid. And I looked at a little bit of data. With 4-5, which was our got trained in the beginning, we have, I think, like 34 kids identified with goals and strategies. And then just K3 that got trained as the year went on, another 34 kids with goals and strategies. So it's a good start. But that doesn't include the kids that have just been talked about that are thriving and continue. If that makes sense.
Any further questions? All right. Thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you.
Chair directs members' attention to item 14, report of the status of school and department goals. Chair recognizes the superintendent.
Good evening. I will try to connect. Here we go. All right, so first of all, I want to apologize because I intended to send these in the packet, but I had big plans for a more comprehensive presentation and then thought better of it because no one really wanted to sit here for hours. So then I pared it down, but I did share with you one packet that has all of the school's original goals with their updates, like annotated on there. So you can kind of see the whole picture of each site department. And then I have just pulled the highlights, and there's a second packet that is the slideshow for you to review. So if you take this home and look at it and have any questions later, you can definitely come back and ask. I also have to apologize to our special ed department because our special ed director was the first person to send me her update, and guess which one I left out of the presentation. So I will share the special ed update with you at a later time, but I don't have it here tonight. But they're doing a lot of good work, and it was an excellent update, and I feel bad. Okay, so I just have a couple of highlights in each goal for each school. So at the high school, their first goal was around school safety, basically. And I think they put a lot of work into Smart Pass, and I know, we could probably, I won't look at them, but we could ask our students, and they could have differing opinions on how truly effective it is, but I think in an encompassing way, I think there is some level of accountability. There's some level of that someone's watching and knows where kids are, and I do think it has had some impact, even if not the full impact that it could have had. A couple other things they put on here to celebrate CAUT being awesome. Students and staff can be nominated for doing something positive, and then they draw for small prizes, so that's kind of a motivational thing or a positive school climate thing. And then also the Be the Rock, where staff members recognize one another for their commitment. So again, more of a school culture and value piece in that goal. And their second goal was about their new schedule and improved engagement and learning. So that the master schedule was a big undertaking, and they put a lot of energy into that. And so now they're on the semester schedule with green and white days, some classes year long. So that was a big undertaking, and I think that implementation has gone pretty smoothly. And then Scott time was a new thing, 40-minute block of time, which students see one of their class periods for remediation. Is that scheduled? That's a scheduled thing, right? Okay. It's not like you just pick which teacher you go to. Okay. It's like on a rotation, just making sure I had that right. And then they had some hard data on their chronic absenteeism numbers. So it looks like they've had some improvement at all grade levels. So that's positive. And then third goal, to foster a culture of health and wellness, right? So, but for both students and staff. And so one of the things is the Principal Advisory Council that was created. Students are, a cross-section of students meet with Mr. Finn to hear or discuss new initiatives and give student voice to what's going on at Bonnie Eagle High School. I am sure there's more room for that to grow, but it is something they implemented this year. And then flex time, which I actually saw a senior last year's graduate. So a senior last year. He's like, how come you didn't have flex time when I went there? So I think the juniors and seniors are generally enjoying flex time, which basically gives them a chance to, if they have permission, the parents give them permission, they can sign out to leave school grounds depending on how their schedule works, if they have like a study hall or something. So a little more independence for our students. On to the middle school. Their first goal was around a standardized system for academic and behavioral interventions. And I think this is where BAR, plays a big part in that. They're tracking 100% of students that are discussed through that protocol that was outlined by the team tonight. Increased number of referrals. In this case, a referral's a good thing, right? To the Community Connect. 68 students have been brought forward for intervention, so that's where kids are identified and supports are put in place. And they're decreasing the failure rate. Is that you did decrease it by 10%, Mr. Hand? Or you were? That was your goal, okay. Yes, that's right, sorry. And so they haven't met that goal, but they put their focus on the plan to identify interventions with the faculty. Second goal was around climate and training for teachers and emergency management. There's a couple of other schools that have similar goals. So increase the percent of students that feel the hallways are free from disruption. The survey data isn't tabulated yet, but anecdotally feels better. And then teachers reporting that to, ensure the percentage of teachers reporting favorably to ensure students feel heard and respected during the disciplinary process. Again, survey data hasn't been tabulated, but they feel like they've made some progress there. And staff feeling prepared for emergencies, increasing that from 70% to 100. And we had recently given these surveys, but we don't have the data yet, but we will, and that's something we can share with the board. But staff have been trained in ALICE, we have done tabletops, and they've practiced some of the specifics. So I would be interested to see that data also, but I would be surprised if it doesn't go up, because we've definitely put a lot of work into that. I actually went to one of the sessions with Mr. Hand this winter doing some of the training. And then the third goal at the middle school was data-driven approaches to tailor instruction. So the goal was 100% of students to take the diagnostic tool, that particular diagnostic tool. A new intervention model that targets all students, and 98% of the students utilize the diagnostic tool. And increase the number of students meeting the benchmark main through-year assessment. That's a tough one. Matia. Not fun to say. So currently grades were below 55%, but trying to get to 60%, and it's being given next week, so we don't have that data. And then increase the number of students meeting the main three-year assessment to 50%, and currently it's 40 in math. And again, it has not been tabulated, so that's data that we will share in the fall when we do our wraparound year in review. So on to Buxton Center, they had an increased proficiency goal in math, and then they list some of the work that they've done here. I won't read every bullet to you, but there has been significant work, on math mindset, benchmark assessments, coaching, and then in year 2 of Reveal, and they're seeing anecdotally strong K1 data, but again, you'll see more comprehensive data as we do our wraparound presentation in the fall. So they're seeing signs that kids who have consistently had Reveal, seeing improvements. Reducing chronic absenteeism, and as of the writing of this update, they were at 19%. So just short of the goal, but still an improvement. And so they're continuing to monitor, connect with families, and the importance of school. Because again, we're fighting, 2 years of telling people to stay home anytime they have a sniffle, and it's just hard to break the habits. I think that's what all the schools are fighting. And then Buxton Center, their third goal was proficiency in literacy, increasing it by 5%, from 65 to 70. Didn't reach it through the winter benchmarking period, but are hopeful for the spring data because they take that 3 times a year. And then 67% of students school-wide met their F&P, which is a reading measure, a local reading measure growth goal. So there's, you can have proficiency and you can have growth. You can grow significantly and still not meet proficiency. So considering both is important, but very close to their goal of 70. Edna Libby, prioritizing safety procedures. So there have been safety upgrades. They're exploring. I don't want people to get too concerned about this. We're not going to have kids going out the windows and ladders, but in an emergency, they have talked about, and through Alice, this has come up, our Alice training. Any of our second-story buildings, there really should be some kind of alternate egress. And it would be a rope ladder, which actually sounds kind of fun, but also kind of terrifying if you're afraid of heights. But in an emergency, if your choices are worse, right, then it's nice to have that option. So we're looking into it, and the high school will be another place, middle school, any place with a second floor. And then this has been a focus in all our schools this year, practicing protocols, doing all the required drills, plus there are a few unintentional ones. And then Edna Libby specifically had an experience where they had an alarm get pulled during dismissal. So they had to, already with their traffic problems, they got real-time practice on how you clear a lane for a fire truck to come through when you have that parking lot jammed with buses and cars. But they did it. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And I just want to say specifically to Principal Sidnor how calm she was. She called me and she goes, well, you can probably hear the fire trucks in the background, but everything's fine. I just wanted you to know. Second goal for Edna Libby was about positive community, an inclusive learning environment, and a lot of work was done in that school on staff morale, positivity. Sue Sidnor has collected internal data, principal-only data that she didn't necessarily want to share, but it's information that she has taken to inform her and decisions that she's making, and how she can do better to build more community and recognize staff. They've created new traditions, staff collaboration. So I can just say walking into that building, I feel it. It feels, you can get a feel when you walk into a place, and I think it feels like a really kid-centered place. And then school goal 3, BAR, which you heard about tonight. So all the teachers have been trained and are using the processes that are built into BAR, and then they are looking to expand, as you heard tonight. Georgie Jack, 75% of students will meet their NEWA math goal. And so, again, we don't really have all the data analyzed at this time, but here's sort of a list of all the work that has been done. It kind of exhausts me just to read through it, but a couple of specific events like Math and Muffins to build excitement around math and bring in guests and snacks. I mean, can't beat that. Challenges and training, math buddies, so any numbered things, and then BAR, of course, helps with that goal too. Second goal is 75% will meet their literacy goal. And again, we don't have the finished data, but again, some activities done, including bar, flex grouping, some fun activities like summer reading, kickoff events, and spooktacular, working with Parks and Rec. And then absenteeism at Georgie Jack, keeping it below 10% through attendance meetings, bar, the dean, working with families, and then engagement activities to encourage kids to have a reason to come to school. Steep Falls, also absenteeism, chronic absenteeism, many of those same things, which makes sense because it's the same principle. So that would make a lot of sense there. Plus, they're just good practices. Something that I thought was interesting, all school field trips, and I thought, wait, is that a typo? But no, of course, like some kids, right? Like if they know they're going on a field trip, that's a reason to get up and come to school, and Steep Falls is a place where the whole school sometimes will just pack up and go, so, because they can. Let's see, did I make a mistake here? Nope, okay, oops. My mouse is very sensitive. Back to the goal 2. Okay, so NEWA Math, again, they're in the second year of Reveal. A lot of team planning. They've had a math consultant visit, BAR, MTSS, which is sort of part of BAR, but multi-tier system of supports when kids are struggling for different reasons. And then, again, a literacy goal and some of those same activities, so I won't repeat them. HBMRE, improving the MTSS process. And again, I think this is BAR. You heard quite a bit about this in a little more detail. And if you look at Principal Regan's full update, there's more detail on there. But I think that this has really become sort of a game changer on how to intervene with kids and build plans. And I think the excitement shared tonight by those principals just shows that. This is work, I think, specific. Are other schools doing this, or is this something? Okay, so Principal Casey also, and then Principal Regan are doing teacher clarity work and professional development, working with Corin, right, specifically. And then looks like collecting data from learning walks, which is good, and then you feed that back to teachers, right? So giving them feedback on their instruction, and then working on next steps, ELA power standards, and creating learning progressions. So there's commonality, which is that's great work, because that is a problem in our district with all the different elementary schools, and then even within a school, sometimes it's a challenge. So that's I'm sure that's some beneficial work, and we could hear more about that maybe next year. And then improving student engagement, develop higher levels of student ownership. Classrooms have been utilizing an engagement continuum. Again, BAR, HBMRE specifically, the school counselor there and the principal have promoted an outdoor education model to get kids outside, and that looks like that has really benefited student engagement. I wonder if there's any opportunity to get even like student feedback, right? Like a questionnaire or surveying kids to see what they have to say about it. And then a learning walk on math showed 80% engagement in math, which is important because if kids aren't engaged, they're not going to be learning. And then Hollis, again, chronic absenteeism and truancy was a focus there. BAR, working with the deans and families, only having 2 students truant currently. Chronic absenteeism is more of the challenge these days because parents are often excusing the absences and saying, yeah, they're sick, yeah, I have to take them here, yeah, they have vacation. And that all adds to kids being out of school and not being in front of their teacher. So it's a tough battle, but we keep working on it. Then BAR, and then student recognition as another reason to get kids to come to school, and then more fun. Global Play Day, dancing at dismissal, giving kids reasons to come to school. I think I made a mistake there. I think I didn't put I think I left the same goal there. This was about academic data, math specifically. So no spring data again, but some of the work they've done is expectations in math, the Reveal math implementation, working with their coaches and consultants to improve teachers' confidence and skills, and then beginning math intervention on delayed start. I'm thinking that's I need more explanation on that. Yeah, and then creating professional development that includes exemplars, structured math data meetings. We've done a lot of data meetings with literacy, and I think a lot of the schools are now experimenting with math. It's just hard finding enough time to do all of these things. And then growth in literacy was the third goal at Hollis. Again, spring data not available, but targeted literacy support with consultants, with instructional coaches, data meetings, and then a lot of work through PLCs and looking at their next steps. The Learning Center was working on climate, and I don't think he was able to do a comparison because I don't think he had the data yet for this, so we'll be interested to see. But he's had fewer reports from students and then fewer demerits, which is the system TLC uses. So just with some of the data he has in hand, he's seen improvement in their culture. And then providing teachers with more strategies at TLC with social emotional learning needs, work in progress, but he's done PD with staff to kind of support students as they struggle with particular issues. And then the Learning Center is going to monitor the adaptations and plans of the new schedule. So the schedule change at the high school had an impact on TLC, so they had to make some changes, but that allowed them to kind of put a fresh set of eyes on things. So they had to review credits earned, and it's showing that on average students are receiving a half a credit more with the new schedule. They have fewer classes that last a shorter time, and it seems to be a better experience for students. So I would say that's some good data, at least early on. And then adult ed, enhance and develop English language classes for adult learners. And then she lists the different things that she has put in place: the Ventures ESL series, inclusion of civics education in the syllabus for students to learn citizenship and to teach them about history and American way. And it looks like we had a director. The director obtained her professional certification as an ESL instructor. And then last, an onboarding manual for full-time non-bargaining unit employees. We already have an instructor's manual for use with the adult ed hourly staff, but since there is no onboarding manual, this is something that the director was working on. And that is a very quick and boring overview of update on goals.
Thank you for that exhaustive summary, Clay.
Exhausting.
Are there any questions from directors? Director Meserve.
Clay, I noticed for the action steps on Mount Eagle High School, it said they offered multiple opportunities for people to attend the bullying session, and nobody I didn't know anything about it. So I'm just wondering, how was that cascaded? Because I can't imagine that wasn't.
Yeah, well, you can speak to Lori.
The assistant superintendent.
So they actually tried planning it twice and ended up canceling it the first time because they had 0 people RSVP. So they put it out on Parent Square. They sent it out numerous times to parents, inviting them, hey, come on in. We know you want to talk about bullying and safety. Every single survey we send out, bullying's a big topic, and they got 0. So they tried to have one in like late November, early December. Got 0 respondents, had nobody wanted to come, so they canceled it. And then they held it again in the spring, or not in the spring, but maybe February, March, I can't remember. And so they had a few people RSVP. They thought they were going to have a dozen or so parents come, and then that night, only like 2 people came, and they were staff members. So they had it was a free spaghetti dinner and chat with the principals about bullying and safety. They just didn't get it's hard for people to show up.
Yeah, and it was well messaged to parents. I
Very
think
well
the board
messaged.
doesn't always get all of those messages, but it definitely went out to parents a number of times. And you know, people are busy. I didn't put it as a highlight because I didn't want to like shame people for not going, because I know people are busy. But that last night that Lori's talking about, like I was there, and it was all staff, not really even one non-staff parent. There were parents who are staff members who came, but no parents who weren't staff members. But they're trying, and they'll try again next year.
Is there any, Director Moses?
I guess I'd start by saying that there's a lot of stuff here that it would seem to me that all of this should be maybe in the fall workshopped based on these documents here. Clay, I think you said more than once that we don't have all the data. And there are several references, I won't pick out any specific schools where it's called for an explanation, but there's nobody here to explain it. So that thus the workshop would be helpful. It's, there's a lot of stuff. Lots of people are doing lots of stuff. So it's fairly typical of continuous improvement cycle of plan, do, study, act, and that what we as teachers do really well is do. We do when we plan and we do when we plan. It's the studying and acting on the data that becomes the hard part. And it can be certainly tiresome when we consider this community of faculty and or students or whatever format. There's just so much stuff to do. There's so many great things going here, but the other thing I like to hear partly is that almost all the schools, I think all these schools have 3 goals. My question would be to the schools, how can we get those to be very specific and very quantitative? What I see here is a lot of qualitative stuff, not so much quantitative, so we can really look at what we're really doing, what is the data saying in terms of improving in reading or literacy or whatever the case may be. One of the schools, every goal is quantitative. We will reduce this by percentage. But then at the same time, there's no explanation for those numbers in terms of whether they've achieved them or not. So I think there's value in continuing to work with the schools in terms of writing very specific, very measurable goals, and being very cognitive of quantitative versus qualitative and the need to really make the progress we say we're going to make. And maybe it's the timing of it all, but we started this in September or October when we had these meetings and these goals, and now it's June, and I don't know where the progress is quantitatively overall. So it seems to me it would be worthwhile with the administrators and teams to workshop this where we can really spend some time in the fall.
Thank you, Director. I know that our administrators have some comments to share in response to that, but I just want to say that this presentation was intended to supplement some of our earlier conversations around the goals, not to supplant the need for additional information when we revisit our goals next board.
Yeah, Director Moses, I just want to say, I understand your point, and I don't disagree. The timing is, as long as I've been doing this is the challenge that we have, right? Like, we try to give an update before the board changes over, which this year may, unlikely, I suppose, right? Because we don't have contested seats, but it could, right? It could happen. And the data just is not available to have final data. So that's why what we've tried to do with the hard data is to do a year in review in the fall, because then we have all the previous year's data, and that's when we're looking at what went up, what went down, in what areas. And I feel confident that our administrators are using the data. That we use data more than ever, I would say, in our schools, in teachers at the instructional level, administrators for planning. It's just hard to convey that in this kind of a presentation, even if they were here tonight, and then this would be a 4-hour meeting, right? And I think the workshop setting is better, and maybe it's the workshop setting after we have all the data in, right? That's really what you're suggesting, I suppose, right?
And I'm not suggesting that it be done now or in the next 2 weeks, and as you point out, what I'm saying is that as I remember thinking back in the fall, these goals are admirable, and that's what I would want to look at. I'm not sure I want to spend another workshop creating new goals. What are your goals for this year in terms of this seems to be the work that carries over more than 1 year? And how can we support that and support writing those specifics and looking at the data over time?
And just for my part, I agree with the director that there's a need for specificity in the responses from each of our schools vis-a-vis their goals. We need to have measurable goals where a year from now we can look back and we can make a very quick determination whether or not we have attained that goal. And I would just say, I think we should be more ambitious and not be afraid to fail to reach the goal. I think that we should be more ambitious than not. And the work under each category of goal should be in support of how we can achieve that quantitative metric, I think is what the director's saying, and I agree. In terms of, I had a few questions, but in terms of these responses, I think that perhaps there could have been more specifics offered that weren't. So I maybe my response to the superintendent would be if there are additional specifics that can be provided, that we get them in the future. Are there any further questions? All right. No doubt progress is being made. And I think it would be a mistake not to acknowledge the great work that we just heard about tonight, especially in terms of chronic absenteeism. As far as I could tell, that was down in almost all of our schools, so that's really commendable. So we appreciate your exhaustive, not exhausting report. And I think there's a lot of good news, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the more specific details when we revisit the subject of goals in the future. Because I do think that once we get these spring NEWA scores back, that we'll have some positive news to share. I didn't see any further questions. So I will direct members' attentions back to the regular order, which is item 12, approval of the elementary science, technology, engineering, and math program. Chair recognizes Director Kreutz.
I make a motion to approve the elementary science, technology, engineering, and math program.
Director Walsh moves to approve the elementary science, technology, engineering, and math program. Is there a second? Director Dakotas? Director Kreutz.
Thank you. The curriculum committee did meet last week. I'll present once we have our draft minutes at our following meeting, but we wanted to bring this forward now so that there would be time to prepare for this. So if you look in your packet on page 35, you'll see the proposal for the change, and then there's some additional information about sort of the design. So the summary of this is that we know that our kids are lagging behind in their science assessments. This is not a surprise to any of our teachers or administrators, and they are doing their best on a day-to-day basis, particularly in the elementary level, where a lot of the focus is on literacy and math, to incorporate science, and that is intended to continue, but there isn't, it's difficult to find a dedicated time to devote to just science and these sort of engineering and technology concepts. And so the proposal is being brought forward to add this as a special. So the specials are, right now we have library, art, music, and physical education that takes up 4 of the days of the week, but we don't have a special for the 5th day. And so the proposal is that this would become a new special on that 5th day. There are schools that are trying to incorporate when the kids are back in the classroom and they don't have a special, they are trying to pull in science concepts, but again, it's difficult and it's not necessarily as focused as we would like to see to really engage the kids. So this is at the elementary level, and the idea is really to get a solid science foundation that is getting the kids interested in thinking scientifically, thinking about a problem, thinking about how you design and explain and detail out how to solve a problem. And really get that science foundation, which is what we've heard from the middle school and the high school levels, is that when the kids are coming up to that level, they don't necessarily have that baseline of how to think scientifically, how to do that kind of problem solving, and even some of the basics like how to measure, how to participate in a science experiment. And so this program is intended to fill some of that gap. So some of the questions that I would imagine you and the public may have. So we are obviously in a budget season. Everyone's thinking about the dollars. We are trying to reduce costs rather than add costs. So the good news is that this is a zero-cost proposal. It does need 3 staff members, but these staff members are being pulled in through attrition. So there's no new add to staff. Rather, the spaces that would otherwise be filled by other positions through attrition are going to be able to be consolidated to fill these. I will say that it's dependent, so it's dependent on if the kindergarten numbers stay. So if our kindergarten enrollment numbers go up significantly, we may not be able to pull this off next year. We're right kind of at the cusp that if we end up with more kindergartners, one of those positions is going to have to be used for a kindergarten teacher, and so we wouldn't necessarily be able to implement this. But we do want to lay the groundwork so that if the stars align, we are able to put this out there. We thought it was a really great program. So yeah, three hired staff. Some of those may end up being internal, but they will be applied for positions. No cost. Yeah, so we think this is the curriculum committee heard all about it. Like I said, you can see the information on pages 37 and 38 that kind of cover sort of what the concepts are. And we unanimously approved this to bring forward to the board and recommend that it is approved. Happy to take any questions. And Ms. Casey is here also if I can't field the questions, since she was part of the team that brought it forward and was very passionate along with her teammates.
Superintendent.
Just want to say I support this proposal, and the timing I think is a challenge because, we're talking about a budget, we're talking about trying to reduce taxes, but we still need to provide experiences for kids, and so we already reduced 3 elementary positions. We had to start that planning well before now. We couldn't, and so we had to base. Dawn and I, as we did our work, base the number of our staffing levels based on what we knew in January, February, March. The principals have been working on this all year with the hope that we could add it, and then we've been sort of going around how they can be creative to find those positions. And as Erica said, as long as our enrollments don't substantially change, there are 3 positions from a variety of sort of different schools and combinations of sources to cover the cost. So that's why there's no additional cost to this program. And it wouldn't replace what teachers are trying to do in science. It will supplement it, and it is more than science, right? It's S is science, but it's also engineering, it's integrating math, it's giving kids this sort of double dip of a lot of areas. And one of the things I included in my budget presentations is our science scores, and it's no wonder that they're low, because the teachers just don't have time to do it alone. And if there were people who it was their job to focus on it, I think it would just raise the profile of that content area. So anyway, I support it.
Are there any questions? Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails, and the elementary science, technology, engineering, and math program is approved. Item 15, report of the Committee on Policy and Rules, resolutions. First reading, Resolution 46, ADC, use and possession of tobacco, nicotine, and electronic smoking devices. Pursuant with the rules, the resolution will have been considered read. Chair recognizes Director Dakotas.
Thank you. This policy, you just heard the title, and the changes that were made were minor, but intending to include more substances or devices so that it's clearer as to what the rules are and what following this policy would mean in the schools. So this comes for first reading.
Thank you. Item 16, resolution, second reading, resolution 37, ACAB, harassment and sexual harassment of school employees and associated procedures. Pursuant with the rules, the resolutions will have been considered read a second time. And the chair recognizes Director Dakotas.
Thank you.
Chair is in error. Resolution 38, JJIF, management of concussions and other head injuries and associated procedures.
Okay, thank you.
Director Dakotas.
This policy received a lot of time from the committee and from input from other staff involved with students who might suffer concussions. So it's very clearly delineated. There are charts now available so that the steps for return to learning and return to playing are very specifically delineated as the research changes as well on concussions and the impact that those have on someone who's received them. So the committee approved this, these changes, so they're bringing it forward for first reading. What happened? Those are.
The chair understands that
Those
the
are
director
first.
moves the adoption
Oh, yes.
of resolutions 37 and 38.
37? ADC?
ACAB, and JJIF, which were just read
Those are for
twice.
second reading.
Correct. So you move their
Oh,
adoption.
okay, we're moving, I'm sorry. I thought you were correcting me. Yes, those two policies, I do support the,
Director
being
Dakotas moves the adoption of resolutions 37 and 38. Is there a second? Dr. Kreutz, pending question is the adoption of the resolutions. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails and the resolutions are adopted. Item 17, resolution, second reading.
no,
Chair is in error.
yes. Okay. I'm getting,
Item 17, report of the Committee on Negotiations, resolution, second reading, resolution 40, Assistant Director of Special Services, resolution 41, Assistant Principal, Bonnie Eagle High School, resolution 42, Bonnie Eagle Middle School Assistant Principal, resolution 43, Assistant Elementary School Principal, resolution 44, Athletic and Activities Director. Chair recognizes Director Heath.
Thank you. These are coming forward for the second reading. They have not changed any from the previous meeting. They were all updated to ensure consistent formatting and language across job descriptions.
Chair understands Director Heath moves the adoptions of resolutions 40 through 44. Is there a second? Director Dakotas, pending question is the adoption of the resolutions. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails and the resolutions are adopted. Item 18, recommended approval to select a paid family medical leave private plan. Chair recognizes the superintendent.
I will in turn turn it over to our business manager, Don Pooler.
Thank you. So as you're aware, we were forced into Maine paid family medical leave. And the option was beginning January 1st, we had to withhold 1% of our employees' wages and submit that to the state on a quarterly basis. That percent right now from January through June is 1% being fully paid by the employer. And starting July 1, it was going to be 0.5% for the employer and 0.5% for the employee. Well, an option to this Maine paid family medical leave is to go with a private plan. And so we solicited some quotes from different companies, and we did receive several. Our best option, we feel, is the quote we received from Guardian. And what they're offering is, as opposed to the 1%, they're offering us a 0.95%. Again, we would split that between the employer and the employee, each paying 0.475 beginning July 1st. No, would have been beginning July 1st, but if we go with the private plan, what happens is if we get the application in by May 31st, then we do not have to pay the state of Maine, and we get to go from April 1st through May of 2026 without making a payment. On May 1st of 2026, we would start paying this policy premium to Guardian. So we would see the savings for that time for the employee and the employer. I broke down the savings here. So just for FY25, April, May, and June, MSAD6 would see a savings of $90,000 that we would not have to submit to the state. From July to April of 2026, there would be a savings of $315,000, and that would be half employee, half employer. So the grand total of savings is $405,000. The employer savings is $247,500, and the employee savings of $157,500. I think the benefits of going with this plan are not only the savings, but Guardian is going to lock this rate in for us for 2 years, starting that May 1st. So we have no idea what's going to happen with the state percentage. They may see that several employers have opted out of their plan, and they may have to increase their rate. But we wouldn't be subject to that. We'd be locked in for 2 years, and then after those 2 years, we can renegotiate. We wouldn't even have to stay with Guardian. We could shop around again and see who would give us the best price. Another big option, some of the other companies that bid were going to have us change some of our voluntary benefits, like short-term disability, long-term disability. They were going to have us switch what we currently have now. We provide those things to our employees. They're 100% paid by the employees, but they're all through Unum, and they were going to make us switch and offer it through their company. Guardian isn't requiring any of that. So I was really happy with their proposal. The savings going forward they're still savings, but compared to the 1% rate of the state, we'd be looking at saving about $1,575 a month going forward, which is better than nothing. So I would ask that you give your approval to go with this private plan.
The Vice Chairman.
I move that we approve to select a paid family medical leave private plan through Guardian.
Director Walsh moves to approve. Chair understands Director Walsh moves to authorize the superintendent to approve a paid family medical leave private plan. Is there a second? Dr.
Wait a minute.
Moran?
Question.
We'll in a moment, we're going to process the motion. Chair recognizes Dr. Moses.
Do you anticipate at all any challenge from the state on this?
No, because they have said all along that if you don't go with them, you have to go with a private plan, and they've already approved who those private plan providers can be.
And down the road, if we wanted to drop the private provider and go back to the state, that,
There's a 3-year delay, so once we go with this, we have to stay with this for 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This plan was presented to the Finance and Facilities Committee. Ms. Pooler did a great job. We talked about it a lot. We asked a lot of questions. I want to commend her for her efforts in trying to save the district money and our employees' money and getting us into a plan that looks like it's formed with concrete instead of tissue paper. So thank you for that.
Just a quick question on how that process works. So we would send them the premiums we deduct from the payroll, send them the premiums, and then they send it to the state. And do they offer indemnification in
Oh, I'm
case there's?
sorry, they don't send it to the state. This is our own
But-
private policy with Guardian.
Got it. Okay,
So if we have employees that apply for this, they're going to apply through Guardian.
okay. And then, so there's no concern with the state and the payments at that? We just show that we have the plan with a private insurance, and then that's good. They don't expect us to be sending them, obviously, the premiums. Because I know there are penalties if it's not being paid through, so.
Correct.
We
So
just-
that's why we want the application in by May 31st, and then what we've been withholding right now would not usually be paid until July 15th, but we wouldn't have to make that payment. As far as I know right now, they're not going to refund us the January through March payment. There were a lot of different bills out there or trying to get that returned, and as far as I know, none of them passed, so.
And they're not gonna.
Thank you.
Dr. Kreutz.
So I understand the paid family medical leave is new for the state, so is with the delaying the payments to May of 2026, is there any consequence? I mean, I know, we just heard tonight about a staff member looking for unpaid medical leave, and this isn't available. Is there any delay that if we don't continue to pay the state and we're picking this up at, the end of next year, that they wouldn't be able to take advantage of it sooner? Sorry, I'm not asking this
No,
question.
I think I understand what you're
coherently.
saying. So right now, the state is collecting those payments in order to create a bucket of money so that when people start taking that, when you go with a private plan like this, it's like an insurance policy, right? These insurance companies already have that set aside, that bucket of money set aside.
If we were going through the state, would they have been able to apply sooner than May of 2026?
No, and that might
That-
even be
that would've been a
delayed.
better way to say it.
That might be
Thank you.
delayed further.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Sargent.
Just to remind folks, think about what numbers, that's $250,000 we're saving. And that's a huge number. 2 years of 12% increases in insurances. And this is a savings of that amount plus an ongoing savings going forward. So that's huge, and congratulations to you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there any further discussion? Board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. Motion prevails, and the superintendent is authorized to enter into a private paid family medical leave plan. Item 21, notification of scheduled meetings. On Monday, June 2nd, the Policy Committee will meet at 4:30 in the afternoon in the Central Office Library. On Monday, June 2nd, the Board of Directors will convene at 6 o'clock in the afternoon in the central office conference room. And on Thursday, June 12th, the Finance and Facilities Committee will meet at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the central office conference room. Chair inquires if any directors wish to provide notice of further meetings. Dr. Kreutz.
It's not a question, I have no announcements, but do we know when, so we have elections on June 10th. Is there a planned date for coming together after election results? Do we have that on the books yet? I'm just thinking because since the Facilities and Finance is planning to meet 2 days after, and the new board is not necessarily in place.
The chair would answer in the negative. There is no meeting set at this time. The chair will advise the director that there will be a meeting scheduled by the chair on June 16th before the regular meeting. But I haven't promulgated that notice yet. Are we ready? All right. The Vice Chairman.
I move that we adjourn.
Director Welch moves to adjourn. Is there a second? Dr. Sargent? Pending question is adjournment. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor? All those opposed? 10 directors voting in the affirmative and none in the negative. The board stands adjourned until Monday, June 2nd, 2025 at 6 o'clock in the afternoon.